All right, you're up. We're on the air.
Okay, the Board of Selectmen of Kennebunkport is in session, January 11th at 5 PM at North Street. I'd entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Oh yeah, I gotta read those, yeah. Per MRSA 1 S 405-6E, to consult with the town attorney regarding pending litigation.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, okay? At 5:01, we're in executive session.
What would happen if we voted no to go
one.
Okay, the Board of Selectmen have just come out of an executive session per MRSA 14056E to consult with our town attorney. Nothing was decided. I entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye, okay. The regular meeting will now begin at 6:22,
I'm getting screwed too.
or thereabouts. 6:22, yeah. Okay, so next is to approve the December 28th, 2023 Selectmen meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Next on the agenda is a public forum. It's an opportunity for anyone who wants to address the Board of Selectmen with any issue that is not on the agenda. Anybody? Chief?
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to give you a brief update on some of the damage that we had on January 10th.
If you look behind you, there's a.
Look behind you, I threw some slides together. Chris and I were out today assessing the damage in preparation for a FEMA declaration. And this is an example of Pier Road right at the causeway. Next slide, please. This is looking down at Wamby Beach, believe it or not, where the parking lot was, where you could park, is now gone at Wamby Beach, and some of those big rocks have fallen towards the road, so we lost several feet of parking space there. A lot of that material washed out. Next slide, please. This is a look at Ocean Ave when the tide was up, and the picture to the right there, that is actually part of the sidewalk that's giving way and been undercut right there on Ocean Ave. Next slide, please. This is down by the Bush compound, another part of the sidewalk that's given away.
Wow.
All the debris out there in the front lawn, you know, that's the town's property right there at the end of the Bush compound entrance. It's full of debris. We're not gonna pretty much touch that, and I would hope, you know, until the second storm that comes up in a couple of days. Next slide, please. That's an example of some of the sand that was removed from the roadway down on Kings Highway. The right picture is actually a backlot owner, and you can see how thick the sand is. So we basically just, you know, the highway crews just basically opened up the roads and pushed the sand back into some of the entranceways. You know, unfortunately, we'll probably have the same problem in a couple of days. Next slide, please. This is a look at Dyke Road. Unfortunately, we have folks that still try to go around barricades when they see them in the road like that, and, you know, it causes a lot of problems for us, and, you know, it's not very good for your car to be driving through that salt water, so it's technically a crime to be driving around those, so we hope people, when they see these barricades, will not drive around them unless it's a dire emergency. Next slide, please. This is the head of the harbor on Pier Road. Pretty flooded over. We saw some flooding in other areas like on Mills Road that we've never seen before. Next slide, please. Down Langsford Road, it kind of looks like the end of Langsford Road is an island right now, but yeah, it was pretty thick through there. Next slide, please. This is a look at Dock Square. You know, that's pretty bad. That's pretty comparable to the storm. I just finished the paperwork up that happened in December 22, was it?
Yeah.
I just finished that project with FEMA, you know, just a couple of weeks ago, and here we go again. So, yeah, that was pretty similar to what it looked like that day. Next slide, please. That is, you know, the Pier Road and the Causeway. Really can't see much, just the guardrail. Thank God we're working on that eventually. Next slide, please. That's it? Good. So just as a note, we're preparing for the FEMA declaration in hopes that that happens and goes through. I can tell you that I just got a weather report for the storm. It starts Friday night and most of the day Saturday. We are going to experience the same tides, if not worse. So, you know, they're expecting 2 to 3 feet of, you know, swell. So again, folks know where those places are that flood. Please stay out of them. You know, in the middle of the storm and all that, it's not a good time to be checking on boats and property. You know, you're not going to do much when there's 5 feet of water. So help us out there as best you can, because I know the fire department runs really ragged trying to keep people out of the water, out of their basements and stuff like that, but it's going to be a tough call. So we expect a damage, you know, even worse, because there's been no time to fix the damage. It's been done now, so just be cautious. Any questions, folks?
No, it was really something. I've lived there 23 years and head of the harbor, and the water actually breached everything along there. And it's the first time ever I got water up on my lawn, front lawn. So it was a scary thing. And the house across the way, the newer house.
Yeah.
I mean, that thing was.
Yeah, you
thank
can see
God
the
they
watermark.
raised it up.
Yeah, you can see the watermark.
You can
That's
see the
pretty
watermarks
impressive.
and yeah,
Pretty impressive.
yeah. And then the Halls, who live right around the corner, both of them are in their 90s. Their house was completely surrounded by a moat. And every time a car or a truck decided that they were going to go through there,
Yeah.
it just sent the waves into their house. Yeah,
It's tough.
so,
but,
yeah.
You know, we throw the barricades out, they're still out there, but again, we ask people not to go around them, do the best we can. Thank you.
But there's free seaweed out there if anybody wants to come get it.
You have a sale.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Continuing, we have a number of special amusement applications to consider, and when you're making a motion but all of these have been approved, by the way, by the staff, and if you're making a motion to approve these, would you please read each name first, and then we'll approve them en masse. So I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to consider the following special amusement applications. The Boatyard, Kennebunkport LLC, DBA The Boathouse, 21 Ocean Avenue. Cape Arundel Inn LLC, DBA Cape Arundel Inn, 208 Ocean Avenue. Hidden Pond LLC DBA Hidden Pond, 354 Goose Rocks Road. IB1 LLC DBA The Clubhouse at Cape Arundel Inn. The Kennebunkport Inn LLC DBA The Kennebunkport Inn, One Dock Square. Lodge on the Cove LLC DBA Lodge on the Cove, 29 South Main Street. Tides Beach Club LLC DBA Tides Beach Club, 930 Kings Highway. Yachtsman Hospitality LLC DBA Yachtsman Hotel and Marine Club, 57 Ocean Avenue.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All
I got a quick
Oh,
question.
yes, sure.
On the applications, how do I interpret music and dancing for all, across all of them?
However
that's
you'd
the
like.
amusement.
Let's,
No, it's, so, given, what hotels are using. So for example, the Tides Beach, on their application, it has music and dancing. Is that,
So the music is amplified music, requires a special amusement, and dancing can be one person, two person, multiple. What would go back to in terms of the other permits and the site plan approvals for those hotels or vittlers determine the number of seats they can have and the floor space and things of that nature.
okay, thank you.
all right. Annual investment presentation by H.M. Payson.
Did we
Wait,
vote
we
on
didn't
that?
finish.
Oh,
We didn't
yeah,
vote.
Sorry, sorry about that.
I'd second the.
Okay, all those in favor? Thanks. Wait. 5-0.
Thank you. That went much quicker than I thought it was going to go. I think everybody on the select board has a copy of the packets.
Yep.
Yep.
And we can answer any questions related to the bigger issues or the third quarter or fourth quarter outlook, excuse me, or even 2024, calendar year 2024. But I'll jump right into the actual investment review. But if you have any questions, please, I don't want this to be interactive. I don't want it to just be a download, but if you don't have any questions, that's fine too. So page one that you see up on the screen, this is the end of year snapshot for the asset allocation for the fund. You can see the total account value at the bottom of the page at 1.83 million. And we have 73, just about 75% equities between our managed equity position and a small cap equity exposure that we just added to the portfolio. Rest of the portfolio is in bonds and cash and short-term instruments. So call it 75-25 asset allocation for the portfolio. Again, snapshot as of year end. I'm going to jump to page 3 so you can look at the total account return, and we'll go back and forth a little bit between page 2 and 3. But fiscal year to date, which obviously begins 7/1, the account return just under 6% for the first 6 months of the fiscal year versus 6.35% for the benchmark. And previous one-year return at 14% versus 18%. So we're behind the benchmark for that one-year period. If you go back to page 2, the explanation for that, if you go down to the previous year number and look at the managed equity piece, most of the way down the page, the equity portfolios were up 18%. The S&P was up quite a bit more than that at 26%. Now, if you had a chance to review the packet, this is a function almost exclusively of the top 7 stocks in the S&P 500, which drove almost all the returns this year. So first year in my career, and I've been at this a while, that I've been disappointed in 18% equity return. But a lot of the so-called Magnificent 7 stocks that everyone's heard about recently, some of the valuations in these stocks, even though they've done very, very well, a lot of momentum in these companies. Earnings momentum, and a lot of them are very high-quality companies, but they're very, very expensive, and we tend to be a little more conservative from a valuation standpoint, so that's why we underperformed in calendar year 2023, but you can see we're catching up, obviously, in the fiscal year to date. And then if you go back to page 3, with the 3-year numbers, this is on the total return, again, versus the benchmark. The 3-year numbers at 544 versus a 540, so ahead there, and also for the 5-year return and since inception. Excuse me, since inception, you can see the portfolio has returned 8.3% against roughly 7.5% for the benchmark. and we're coming up on almost 9 years now in the portfolio. So all in all, again, 2023 was a very good year in the market, 14% return for the account, but again, we underperformed, mostly due to a lack of exposure to some of those large cap stocks that really ran away from us this year. We don't own Tesla, which was one of these Magnificent Seven so-called. We have Apple. We've got exposure to a lot of the names, but just not in the size that they currently exist in the broader market. So, and again, most of that's a function of valuation and sizing. So we're not going to chase those types of returns if the valuations are out of sync, particularly with municipal money. So again, a little more conservative approach, but you can see that's paid off over the duration of the fund. Any questions on that?
I got a question for you. I'm happy with it, no question, but are we required to keep a minimum balance of cash? I see, we got $61,000 worth of cash. I was just wondering, are we required to keep, is that operating cash or is that?
No. So none of these funds are operating funds of the town. These funds are all endowment funds that are earmarked for the firehouses. So the operating funds are completely separate, and we don't run those. Only the town runs those funds.
So what do we do with the cash? Why do we keep so much cash?
Well, I mean, we do distribute cash on a regular basis, but the cash now is an actual asset class where it hasn't been for some time. So cash used to pay us next to zero. So consequently,
now we're getting 5%.
Now we're getting 5%.
Yeah.
So cash to us, the optionality of having that liquidity and having that cash available to us, but still capturing actually more return than you get on a 10-year treasury. And it's a treasury money market fund, so it's 100% safe. So there's really, I look at that almost as a short-term bond fund, which it really is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, at 5%, given the valuations in the equity markets right now, I'm perfectly fine. If I have to sit in cash at 5%, I'll collect that all day long. Just,
Okay, no, I just wondered why.
Yeah.
When we were looking at it, that's all.
Yep,
Thanks, appreciate that.
sure.
Anybody else, question?
I think they've done a great job
Yeah.
over the last 9 years.
Yeah, it's
We
good,
started with a little bit
Looks it, yeah.
over $1 million, and look at what we have now.
And just so the board knows, Alan and I spent about an hour and a half or almost 2 hours with you guys last week going through and everything.
good, no, it's great.
Well, let's jump to page 4 just to show you what those numbers mean. So the numbers in the abstract from a percentage return standpoint are healthy, but from an actual dollar standpoint, it's always good to understand what those mean. So if you look, we'll just go inception to date. So since we've had the fund, if you look over on the far right, you can see we started out with just over $1.1 million. We've distributed on a net basis $277,000 over the duration of the fund. And then we've got investment gains of roughly $952,000 to get us to our current end-of-year valuation at $1.83 million. So, yeah, good growth in the portfolio. From a net basis, we've basically doubled the amount of money that's in the fund if you take the 277 away from the 1.15. So, and this, of course, means more money distributed for the firehouses because these funds,
Yeah.
they're distributed on a percentage basis, a rolling average, but the numbers increase every year, so.
Anybody else have questions? No? Anybody? I'm good.
Page 5, just to give you a quick primer, for those who haven't seen this before, we do this on a characteristics-based approach. So these are some of the characteristics that are important to us, and they all distill up into that V ratio on the right-hand side of the page. So it's the return on invested capital plus our dividend yield divided by the PE multiple, or the price-to-earnings ratio. So if you look to the left under the characteristic summary, you can see the Kennebunkport portfolio, again, versus the S&P, using that as the proxy. So you can see the price-to-earnings multiple, we're slightly behind the S&P, which means we're less expensive, which is a good thing. Dividend yield is slightly lower. Payout ratio is lower, which is actually good too, even though that might appear counterintuitive. The payout ratio is a percentage of profits that companies pay out in the form of dividends. So the lower the number, the more upside that the companies have to be able to grow their dividends and grow them on a regular basis. So we want, it's a growth of income type approach to the portfolio, whereby that line ascends left to right. So you can grow these companies in the portfolio will grow these dividends consistently over a long period of time, and the portfolio will generate more income. You really won't see us own companies like AT&T or Verizon. They pay very high yields, but they also, their payout ratios in the 80 to 85% range. And so what happens is if you get a bad economy, sometimes not only do they not grow the dividends, but sometimes dividends are at risk and they can be cut. So over the long term, companies that grow their dividend over time and compound those returns generally outperform the markets in our experience. So the return on invested capital number is really kind of the star of the group here at 13.6% versus the S&P of 8%. So this is basically, this is kind of our touchstone, if you will, for companies. If you can earn your cost of capital and then compound that capital over time and then consequently pay a dividend, and these companies all do that very, very well. And the long-term debt to capital ratio is lower than the S&P, so that's also good. The real takeaway from this slide is, from a client perspective, the portfolio, we've got a V ratio of a 0.8, with the S&P at a 0.49, or call it a 0.5. The takeaway is that the S&P is expensive. So we're being pretty cautious right now. I did a couple of sales in the last week. We've reduced some of our healthcare holdings, and again, where we're getting 5% on the money market funds, call it frictional cash, if you will. So it's ready for investment, but only unless we find something that we feel excited about. And then the last page is just the top 10 holdings. And again, it's got some of these important characteristics from our perspective on the right-hand side. I'll draw your attention to 4 columns over. The dividend growth, the 5-year dividend growth. If you go down and you look at the top 10 and you look at the total stock portfolio, annualized 5-year dividend growth of 12% in the top 10, 18% in the overall portfolio. So that's nearly 3 times the S&P 500 annualized dividend growth rate of 6.5%. So we like that a lot, very happy with that. And again, the ROIC, a few more columns over to the right. The top 10, twice what the S&P return on invested capital is, and then of course we just talked about the consolidated portfolio ROIC at 13.6. So, and most of these names everyone knows. Alphabet, of course, is a parent company of Google, Apple, Microsoft, Berkshire Hathaway, and then Broadcom. Broadcom's and NVIDIA in this top 10 are our tip of the hat to the AI mania, if you will, that's been kind of sweeping the markets. And NVIDIA is probably the poster child of that. It's a great company, very expensive. We've kind of legged our way into it, so we have a reasonable position now at 3%. And then WEX, of course, main company, financial, but really technology. So very well run. And that's it. At the very end, we've got all our holdings in the portfolio that you can review, and happy to take questions.
Anybody have questions? No? Good? I'm good.
Thanks very much. It's great to see everyone again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I thought we just have Nicole, our finance director, report on what the payout this year, what the 4% will be, and to the 4 fire companies.
So annually, we do a 4% payout for the overall. So at the end of December, our average was 1.6 million. So 4% of that we're paying out is a total of 50,438. So that gets paid out to the Wildwood Fire Company. So they're going to get a payout of 8,070. The Village Fire Company will get a payout of 18,158. Atlantic Fire Company and Goose Rocks Fire Company will both get, each will get 12,105. and that is the 50,438.
It's pretty nice.
Okay.
Yep, thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Nicole.
See you in a few months.
So the next item on the agenda is the presentation of the capital improvement plan. This is-
Yeah, so in your packet, you have a PowerPoint presentation. And as part of the fiscal year budget process, we begin each year with our 5-year and beyond capital plan. It's an opportunity for the departments to examine what the needs of the community are and to bring those forward for presentation to the board as well as the town. We do our best to coordinate and prioritize the need for these improvements. I would remind everyone that a capital plan is a plan and this is not a budget. So the capital plan is a discussion and a planning document, and then those items will find their way through the budget process. But there are a variety of funding sources, and we'll talk about those. But they're not all generated through the operating budget. Some of these might be long-term debt, some of these might be through reserve funds, trust funds, grants, and even private sources. So an example would be a fire truck that may cost $1 million. In the budget, you will see every year we put in an amount for the apparatus reserve. But in the capital plan, you will see it only when the year we are going to purchase it and the total amount. And so that's how the capital plan is different from the budget process. This 5-year CIP is just shy of $32.5 million. It includes equipment, buildings, and infrastructure. It is, has a plan. This includes the wastewater as well, which, as you know, is funded through wastewater fees as well as through property taxes, and includes bonds of up to $16 million almost, potentially. Budget over a 5-year period of $9.7 million, and grant opportunities as well as the use of reserves. So I will have each department come up and we'll go through the PowerPoint process. And so we're going to start at the beginning of our PowerPoint with what is a capital improvement plan? So as we've stated, it's a multi-year financial plan. It tries to identify all capital projects, sets those priorities. So priorities is what year it needs to be funded. And we really look to share resources between departments as well as regional agencies. And it helps us look at future financing so that we're not making decisions in a vacuum. Next slide. So if we just look at this upcoming fiscal year, which will be fiscal year 2025, it's about $13.4 million. You can see out of that $13.4 million, the largest piece is in administration, and that is funding for a town hall. So the town hall is still in our capital plan, regardless of its funding. And you can see how the rest of the departments are broken up. Next slide, we look at funding sources. And so for FY25, there is bond funds because the town hall project wouldn't be paid $9 million from bonds, but there is $6 million that we'd be looking at from bonds. And some would come from reserves as well as other grant funds. If we look at FY25 by type, that town hall project again shows the largest part of that pie, with infrastructure, which is more streets and wastewater, and then equipment. If we look at the whole 5-year plan, next slide, of FY25 to FY29, we're at that $32.5 million. You can see that $9 million for town hall is smaller over the 5 years, and wastewater, special projects, and public works, streets, infrastructure, and special projects mostly includes other infrastructure projects like Head of the Harbor and Ocean Avenue. And wastewater is a lot of rebuilds of pump stations. If we look at the next slide, FY '25 to '29, the funding source, you will see bonds are almost half. You'll see budget is a large piece, and we're always looking for opportunities for grants and reserves. And just keep in mind, these reserves depend on us putting funds away, and the grants depend on their availability and our success in achieving them. Our last slide by type, so the 5-year CIP by type, infrastructure is the largest piece, with buildings and facilities. Again, that town hall project would be a large portion of that, buildings and facilities, and next is equipment. But infrastructure is going to continue to be a big player. So if we go to the next slide, we talk about process. So certainly we start at the department level, really assessing our long-term needs. And every year, this is a living document, we reassess those needs. And so just because last year's CIP had a truck in FY '27 doesn't mean that that same truck will be in FY '27 this year. Priorities may have changed in that year. We continue that, the next slide, we've compiled these to the best of our knowledge and ability, but even today, we were looking at road damages, those things continue to happen, and we continue to refine our investments based on changes in our environment. I would also remind you that capital assets are defined with a cost of $10,000 or more and a useful life in excess of 2 years. So if we were to purchase a lawnmower for $8,000, that would not show up in this capital plan. So let's begin with the administration spreadsheet. So you will see that the largest item in here is the town hall construction. Again, we have a new town hall building committee, and we are looking to begin that process. But for right now, our placeholder is about $9 million until we have a different plan or a more refined plan. We also have records preservation in each of the years, as well as the replacement of our codes vehicle, our Subaru, which is slated for FY '27. If we go to the next slide, we'll talk about the construction. As we know, this was the most recent design of Town Hall. We are beginning the next phase of the Town Hall building design, and so we'll have a new one to bring forward, but right now the plan is that we would still bring that forward to the town sometime in 2024. Next item is records preservation, and I'll let Tracy O'Rourke, our town clerk, discuss that.
Good evening.
Hey, Tracy.
This year, Kennebunkport will be celebrating the 370th anniversary of its existence as a corporate body under legislative control. It was originally known as Cape Porpoise, and the name was later changed to Arundel, and then finally in 1820 it became Kennebunkport when Maine became a state. We are the second oldest town in Maine. That is an extraordinary history, and we are fortunate to have documents in our vault dating back to 1678. My predecessor, April Dufault, was a champion of records preservation and worked hard to set up a restoration plan that I follow to this day. The books that are currently on our schedule are the town record books from the early 1970s. These books contain town meeting
Do you remember
records.
the 1970s? I do.
They contain meeting information, ordinance revisions, and budget allocations. While the 1970s doesn't sound that far back, at least to me, 50 years can do much damage to paper and books that aren't preserved with quality products. Once we're up to date with the town record books, we'll start the valuation books back to 1944 and to the present. So if you look at the slide behind you, you can see examples of the company that does our preservation for us. The name of the company is CoFile, and we have used them for decades, well before April. So you can see on the left some of the damaged older books that have been around for a long time. And the top middle, you can see the documents are loose, they're hard to read, And then on the top right, you can see the process of they are cleaning the pages, they're restoring them, they're taking off any pieces of tape or anything that's been there over the years that can damage the paper quality. And the lower right-hand corner is a finished book. They bind it in a nice binder. All of the paper is preservation quality, archival, and these books will last us for hundreds more years. So that's.
Are they photocopied onto the page?
No, it's the actual page. So the process is that each sheet that they take out of our old books is surface cleaned, deacidified, and mended in a lab setting, and all adhesives and non-archival materials are removed, and then they take those sheets and encapsulate them into archival polyester and then place them in custom binders. So it's the original piece of paper that gets.
Sealed in a way that.
Yep, exactly. And feel free if you ever want to stop by and look at some of the books in our vault. Sometimes I bring them, but they're heavy and I figured the slides will do us justice tonight.
So I have a question.
Sure.
Who was the first town? Since we were the.
Kittery.
second- Kittery?
Kittery,
Oh, no kidding,
Yep.
okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Who was the best town?
Well, that's obvious.
Kittery encompassed
So
towns.
I can understand, like, older documents, that we would go through this process, but from the 1970s, where do we make the cutoff in terms of documents that we would just digitize because we need records versus things that we would want to do this level of preservation with?
I think if we go through the 80s, that's when they're starting to break down. We've been pretty good in the 90s and forward as far as putting them in sleeves that are acid-free. So those pages aren't nearly as damaged. They're actually encapsulated now. But the books through the 80s are just the loose leaf. You know, people touch them over the years, and they're starting to break down.
But is there, I guess, what's the category of documents that we're doing this with?
We're doing it with everything. All of the town meeting
When
record books.
when you say everything, we have many, many town files we're not doing this with. We're doing them with your files.
Right, the record books that have all of the town meeting warrants, votes, everything that was discussed at town meetings.
Okay.
And that's all in paper, there's some of that is certainly digital, isn't it recorded
Yeah.
in Word documents and? things
It
like
is,
that?
but through the 80s at least, we'll have to go back. We don't have things, even I would say through the 90s. I think probably our town meeting records are in the 2000
Is it
range.
cheaper to digitize versus preserve? Like, I definitely, the older stuff you want to preserve, but from things from the 80s and stuff, is it cheaper just to digitize versus?
It actually isn't, because you have to have the equipment to be able to read the documents, and I checked around with other towns around our area to see if anyone digitizes these old documents, and they don't. I checked with Kennebunk and Biddeford and Scarborough, and they all preserve their old records this way. Anything going forward, certainly, from the time when we have access to the computers and things are digitized. But,
So that's kind of my question, what we're doing today, 50 years from now, are we gonna have to go back, I mean, it's not paper,
No.
it's still, it is digital, is it all?
No. it's all-
We are required to keep paper records, but we do have digital records.
Yeah, we're required to keep the paper, but as far as archive, it would always be digital, right? So there's no sense having the
It all-
digital and then 10 years,
It depends on what state statute will allow.
Good point.
Technology
see.
changes.
But that's for so many years, right, after the.
And so there are things that we have to keep forever. And so we get that through the state offices, what our record retainment policy is. So I would remind you that before COVID, you couldn't meet virtually, even though the technology was there. So state government is slow to change. It doesn't mean that they won't, and I think as that technology continues to proceed, it will allow for that. I mean, one of the things to make records really valuable to us is to not just digitize them, but to key code them.
To search.
So that we can find
Yeah.
information.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason for it. That's
Right.
why I was asking the question
Right.
on digitation, because then it's the accessibility of
And
those.
usually, communities who are going in that direction we'll start from a certain period moving forward rather than try to go back because it's just overwhelming. Yeah.
And so when are we, so the 5-year plan, we're still ongoing, doing this until 28, and then there's actually a future spend, so when's the perceived end?
We could go on. We have valuation books dating from 1944 to the present, and those are they're big, thick books. So we want to keep those preserved because, again, they're starting to break down. The pages are 80 years old or whatever. So we would want to get those preserved. And we've already started that process, and then we stopped to go back to the town meeting records because those seemed more important than the valuation records. But I think that, we could it would take a long time to get everything that we have that we'd like to get done finished.
And so we're not, I'm just checking for understanding, and so as, like, today's records, we, to John's point, we wouldn't have to preserve them 50 years from now, because we've got them digital. And we do have some requirement for paper, but.
Right.
That would be the only thing.
So we have them in.
Hopefully, within 50
paper.
years, the government would change their requirement, because there won't be paper left.
Right.
You can hope.
We hope.
Cool.
Thank you.
All set? Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So next up, we have Chief Everett to discuss the fire department. Next slide.
Evening.
Okay.
So for this year, there's not a lot, but we'll move through, the station renovations when the town hall possibly gets built, however that works out. Our normal, the annual PPE I have to buy, things like that. In FY '27, I'll point out the 355, right now, that's the air pack replacement. That'll be the end of a 10-year, putting a little bit away every year for the 10 years, so it's not that $350,000 hit all at once.
Right.
And the others, and then what crept on to the CIP plan is the generator for this building. Was original to the building 2001. It probably is gonna need to be replaced at some point in that time frame.
So that was the general overview. Do you want to give them an update on the 2 trucks we have?
Oh, yep. So, I'm almost done with the pre-con stuff on the ladder truck, to get that where, it's still not gonna be here for about a year. But we're getting to that point where we'll have all the i's dotted and t's crossed, and the engine itself is another year after that, because companies don't build as many ladder trucks as they do engines, because most departments like ours has 3 engines to 1 ladder, and so that's why that's another year out after that. And yep, that was all I.
Well, we're not done. So
Okay.
the next slide talks about the firefighter PPE.
Yep.
So for FY '25,
Yep, this is the annual, to replace 7 to 8 sets.
next item is part of FY '25.
Is replacing my vehicle. I did notice something unfortunately today. I got looking at it and was talking with a friend, and he's like, no, that's a 2014. I'm like, it's always been on paper in my office as a 2015. It's a 2014. I don't know when it was bought. But it's replacing this vehicle. It's to be able to upgrade it to something, maybe not a pickup truck for me personally, but then to have the pickup truck to go and pick up things in the fire, a whole bunch of hose and disgusting dirty stuff that we need to pick up and move after a fire or something like that, to use it as a utility vehicle for the department for the rest of its life.
The next item?
So I had a problem with overhead doors year and a half ago, and speaking with the guy who came to fix it, the door wouldn't go down all the way. And he said it's a problem in the circuitry, These are original to the station, 2001, 2002, or somewhere in there, and they can't get replacement parts. He was fortunate enough, and we haven't had anything else happen to him, but the motors and the electronics of them do need to be replaced. We are hoping, if everything went through with the renovation after the town hall, that the doors would be part of it. But just to at least have this to then either use during the renovation, if I hadn't had to use it, but to have it, if I have to, it's not gonna really screw up my budget.
Okay.
This is for all 4 doors?
This is for all 4 doors, yes.
Next item.
So this is, we talked about this some last year, but looking at renovations for where we were as a department in 2001 to where we are now, the increases that we've had with the decrease of volunteers over those years, and getting the station ready for the ultimate part of having to go per diem, where we need certain facilities to make that happen that we don't have presently. And this is just a picture of what the drawing of the footprint of the station would be. The yellow is what would be added on, and the purple areas are what would be renovated. So the meeting room that we're in right now is the large purple area that would be made into offices and the operations of the department. So obviously, unless we're not using this room for meetings like this and all the other meetings of town, we can't move anywhere either with this plan, but.
And that's it for you.
All
Any
right.
we gotta ask,
that's
any
good.
questions for Jay?
So we got the truck, the ladder truck, but
Yes.
it's gonna be without an engine for a year, is that right?
No,
I was gonna say,
buying the engine is separate,
Oh, okay,
not a fire truck engine,
yeah, that's what I meant.
not the
yeah.
physical engine that runs the truck. It's it's 2 trucks.
Why do they call it an engine? Because of the pumping?
Yeah.
For the pump?
Yeah,
I gotcha,
Yeah.
yeah.
all right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So next up, we have Stephanie Simpson for Parks and Rec.
Again?
Hello there, yes. So my capital improvement plan for Parks and Rec, the way I approached it was looking at the priorities that we set with the master plan, and then balancing that with some immediate needs and other items. So looking at the first year coming up here, fiscal year '25, we have some money, we're gonna be asking for money, for Parsons Field, because we discussed how we want to fix the drainage before we do anything there. So, this is money for the survey and for some engineering work, design work there. And then, you'll see in a minute here, I've got some pictures of our pickleball tennis courts and some of the damage that is there that we need to fix. And that's an immediate need. Then moving forward, you'll see we have the bus replacement. We have a 2015 Bluebird that serves us very well and we use quite a bit, but it does need to be replaced. We originally had it in for this coming year, fiscal year '25, but I have pushed it out for 1 more year. I think we can get through 1 more year with the current bus. So that is in fiscal year '26, along with a few things at Rotary Park, and then the site reconstruction at Parsons Field.
Have you looked at all at an option of an electric bus by chance? Have you?
I have not looked at that option, but we certainly can.
I'd be curious what the deltas would be.
How many
Yeah.
miles are on the bus?
There's a little over 28,000 on the bus.
What do
No,
we-
it's not. It's not a lot.
What do we use the bus for?
We have ski trips, senior trips. We use it for camps, and different programs like that. It's a 14 passenger, so you don't need a CDL to drive it.
Would it make more sense if there's only 28,000 miles on it to do a rental of something when we needed it? Rent as needed?
We've looked at rentals because there have been summers where we would like to have two vehicles to transport the number of people. And rentals of these vans and minibuses, et cetera, are very, very expensive. And we've just found, there was a summer, we did rent one to try. It was this summer of COVID, I think. And it's just not cost-effective to do either.
Why are you getting rid of it, though, with only 28,000 miles on it?
It is starting to see some damage. We just recently had leaks in the roof that we had to have repaired. It's just the seal was breaking down, so there was water dripping inside. It's, you know, some of those kinds of things that are starting to happen. Ideally, I would like to keep that bus and get a second one, because we also do have to use school buses sometimes when we have more. And we're limited sometimes to the amount of people we can bring on senior trips, on, you know, our lunch trips that we do with seniors where we, you know, we have them on waiting lists and we can't accommodate everybody. So ideally, it'd be great to have two. I think it's great also that we don't have to have a CDL to drive them. Hard to find people with a CDL that wants to drive a rec bus. So having the smaller bus is nice.
So I have to ask now, sorry.
Yeah.
But why wouldn't we just use a school bus then?
Well, they're not always available, and we have to make sure we have a driver. So, right. And so for our summer camp, we're able to hire one driver. There's one woman that will do it, but most bus drivers don't want to work in the summer. And so that's tricky to find a bus driver for that. Like, we can't, like, sometimes, like, we have 110 kids in our camp, and a bus doesn't hold 110 kids. So we have to separate and go on trips on different days because we can't find that second bus driver that will work for us.
CDL drivers are expensive.
To get your CDL is expensive, and I looked into trying to get my rec programmers their license, and one, it's expensive, and in the past, the school district has helped us out and done the training for us, and nobody is doing that anymore. They are only training their own staff, and they're not training other people, unfortunately.
Thank you.
So it's a lot of short trips, right?
Yes,
It's 8 years old, so it's, yeah. So
Yes.
more-
Yeah, people
more
tend
wear
not
and
want to
tear.
drive far on that bus.
No, more wear and tear, yeah.
right. And then, as we go into fiscal years 27 and beyond, it is the master plan work that we are looking at. The only other item that's on there that is not part of the master plan is the village parcel trails. That is in FY '27.
So do you want to go to the next slide?
And the next slide. This is a reminder of what our priorities were, the high, medium, and low, coming from our master plan, which is what I tried to follow when looking at the capital improvement plan. Next slide. This is some of the damage out at the courts. In 2021, we had a crack fill and repaint job done out there, but as you can see, the cracks just continue to come. And the one in the middle there, although it doesn't look like it's big, it's pretty wide. It's a good, almost half-inch opening that it just needs to get fixed. And then where the posts are, where the concrete is coming up, there's a lot of spots where that top layer of paint is, there's water getting under it and it's starting to bubble. So it really needs to get redone. The basketball court is also included in this, and all the basketball court probably doesn't need a complete resurface. It does need to get painted and restriped.
I notice you have a lot of grant money, hopefully, in here, too.
Yes, I've been looking into different grants that we can hopefully will apply for, and, you know, you apply, you know, and you hope that you can get that money. But there's a lot for, you know, trails, for children's activities, for, you know, ADA trails and different things like that. So we'll be looking into a lot of those and applying as we get close to these projects. And next slide, I think there's one more, just the field. Yeah, so I don't know if you had a chance to drive by the other day when it was filled with water. But yes, we had a lot of water as well. It was like a swimming pool out there. It's, you know, it's the grade, it's not level, and so it all pools into one corner. And so it just needs to get a little bit of work before we start adding the amenities.
So Parson Field, will that start in 25?
The survey and kind of some of the engineering work and figuring out what it is we need to do.
Okay.
And then the following year will be the actual work done.
Thanks. Parsons 26.
Yeah. I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Good.
All right.
Good time.
Thank you.
Exciting time.
Thank you.
So next, we have the Cape Porpoise Pier CIP, or the Pier CIP, which covers Government Wharf as well. And so the only items we have in here are a hoist replacement in '26, as well as Cape Porpoise Pier Phase 2. So you remember that we had some ad alternates on the Cape Porpoise Pier bid. Good news, we're hoping to advertise the Cape Porpoise Pier bid next week. And so we're waiting for final approval from DOT on our bid specs. But we've added some we have ad alternates, and so that includes the South Pier and the solar panels and the large hoist. And so if the bids require it, then we will need to have a Phase 2, which DOT has told us we would be eligible for a grant. So we're waiting to see, but if so, we anticipate our cost would be about $400,000, and then we would, it would be split between grant and town funds. And then the next slide, you'll see a picture of the hoist that we have out there at the pier. So next we have Chief Sanford to cover police.
Good evening, folks. Can you go to the next slide, please? Everybody's got that paper. The exterior of the building around the eaves is, you know, I got some money in this capital that I have right now, but that's a continuing problem that's starting to carry around the exterior of the old part of the building. And I've got some holes, and it's starting to deteriorate other parts of the building. I've also got a couple of doors that need to be replaced on the exterior of the building and some of the siding. But I think I can get that done with $15,000 to keep the building in good shape, because we just had the roof replaced when we had the addition on in the front, so the roof is good to go for at least another 15 years. The next slide, please. So police vehicles are an important part of our job. It's what our office is. Can you go to the next slide, please? We've been looking at cars for the last couple of years. I've got, you know, some base numbers here. It's very difficult working with the dealerships right now, especially Ford. Supplies have been issues, obviously, because of COVID, and then we had, you know, some strikes going on. And right now, the best that I could get out of the place where I just got the last vehicle was that next year, the Fords that are going to be built with parts that are left over. And they're going to redesign the Fords in the following year. So they can't give me any kind of types of delivery or prices, but on a general price, it's $10,000 to $15,000 additional cost to each car, no matter if you buy a gas or a hybrid. So these are rough estimates from some of the information that I can get. You know, I've also broken down using a hybrid and gas using Ford's website, and an estimated cost on gas because that fluctuates as well. And, you know, on an average lifespan of a car is, you know, 3 to 4 years, depending on how much it gets used. So as you can see here in this slide, that, you know, it's pretty close. I can tell you that a lot of the folks that have had the hybrid cruisers have had a lot of problems with them. They have recalls on them, but Ford doesn't have the parts to fix them right now. So a lot of folks are having trouble with these new hybrids. So, you know, I've gotten recommendations that we stay with gas for now, and see how this is going to play out, because when they redesign a car, a lot of the equipment that's in the car doesn't fit. So, you know, these cars cost a lot of money. Changes have gone up where, you know, just to get the equipment taken out and put back in a car, you know, it used to be like $6,000, now it's $9,000. It's a lot of money. So I don't want to, I want to tip my toes in the water lightly before we make big changes and start going to things and, you know, things change. So, you know, my recommendation for this year is to go with gas again and see how Ford's going to play out. Dodge is not making the Chargers anymore, so it makes it kind of tough. It's Chevy, Ford, or you get something like a Tesla, which we've looked at before, and it's a lot of money, and they still haven't worked those kinks out yet as far as equipment going inside. Next slide, please. We are running on a software system that most law enforcement agencies in York County are using. It's well over 20 years old. We have been told in the next 3 to 5 years that company's been bought and sold a few times, that there's going to be a major upgrade. They're not going to support what we're currently using. So in preparations, we got to start putting some money away for that, because I got an estimate to swap us over. Just the department alone was $250,000, and I thought that was a lot of money. But we have come together as a consortium with all of the law enforcement community in York County, and we're going to go out and try to get a bid as a group to supply all of York County, and we all go to the same software at the same time, and then try to use some federal grant money to cut down that cost as well. But on the horizon, it's here, and we just gotta, I don't want it to have to pay $250,000 in 1 year. At least start thinking about putting that money away in the years to come.
Okay.
Yep.
Next slide. Oh, I'm good. So, you know, I had one more thing on this, the flooring in the station and in the nurse's office, but other than that, you know, we're doing pretty good.
Do we have any feedback on hybrid versus gas?
Yeah, I just wish I felt better about it. I mean, tell me, explain again why we aren't doing the hybrid. And the full
Because they
electric's
break
not an
down.
option.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
the-
everybody breaks down. I mean, how
yeah,
much
the delivery schedule alone, last time I tried to lock them down on a delivery of a hybrid, they said maybe a year and a half to 2 years. You know, I can't wait that long for a car, you know, I need that car. As soon as July 1 comes, I'm trying to get that car right away, you know, and normally it's 3 to 4, you know, 6 weeks, you know, I can order a car, and they just can't give us any kind of delivery timeline.
So we've seriously looked at this, and that's what the delivery times are.
They can't even give me a time, sir. And now with the redesign, that's even worse, because the redesign comes up, and, you know, now is it equipment on top of that everything that changes inside? Again, I'm not dead set against it, but it's kind of tough. If I were buying 4 or 5 cars a year, it's a different story, but where that one car that I need, and I need to put it on the road, it makes it very tough to not know when I can actually take delivery of a car.
So I was actually on the other side of the camp. I was okay with, like, the town cars for code enforcement being either electric or hybrid. But when I read this morning, I was like, you know, I don't think I really want the cruiser to be hybrid yet. To your point, I want a couple more years under the belt. I want more infrastructure built. I just sort of want to have a better feel for before we go to our safety vehicles on a hybrid level. That was just my my personal, so I'm sort of the.
These aren't plug-in hybrids, these are gas hybrids.
Correct, sir.
So there's no infrastructure required, and it's a proven technology, but if you're saying that it takes longer to get them, that, to me, is a more valid
And
argument.
right now, the folks that have them are having a hard time with them. They're breaking
Well, they're
down
breaking.
and having issues.
The issue.
Chief, do they have to be a specific model?
They don't, sir, but, well, we're limited in our models. Chevy or Ford right now.
Because of
and-
the equipment that we have?
Well, it's just the.
Well, let's
those are-
talk about the different kind of vehicles we have. So we have the detective's vehicle, which is an Escape right now.
Yeah, it's just a civilian car.
Right. I mean, that's a great, when we go to replace that, an electric vehicle would make all kinds of sense.
Sure.
Because that is not responding, that is going to court, that's going to offices, it's,
Training, yeah.
so I mean, there's different uses for vehicles. The other thing is, if you wanted to budget for a vehicle replacement in advance, so that we could be ahead of the game in terms of ordering something when the time frame is. One of the challenges is when these cars get to the age where we're replacing them, the transmissions go out on them. And so we're trying to beat that timeline because of the amount of use they get as a police vehicle. And so, and I have replaced many a police transmission in my life, but, and so this waiting an extra 2 years is just gonna cost us time out as well as that. So that delivery time is a concern I have. But if the board, I mean, we're here to ask for feedback, and if you're telling us this is the goal and we want you to get there, then to meet both, I would suggest that we start budgeting further in advance for these replacements so that we can take that time delivery.
I'd really like to see us do that.
Like next year, I'm gonna need to ask for 2 cars, I've got 1 car right now that I don't want anybody to use because it's got so many miles on it. I just wanna limp it over the finish line, don't use it unless we have to. It sits there, and
I just have to agree
that's
with-
tough.
I think we broaden our
Very-
horizon, and,
Yes, that we should stick with the gasoline cars for right now.
I think it's safer for our police officers. I'd rather that you have a car that doesn't give you any problems. And, when there's an emergency and you need to book it, you need a car that will respond.
It's just tough right now with the manufacturers, with the strikes and everything, and changing in technology and stuff. We're kind of caught in that.
Well,
Hump right
but we
now.
don't want to put you in a situation where there's an excuse.
Yeah.
Hybrid cars are nice, and, they serve their purpose, but you need to be safe, and you need the right equipment.
Another use is, with the summer kids and things like that, we always give them one of our older cars. That's another area that we might be able to change and do something different, and be able to use some different kind of technology as well.
Well, you can get an older hybrid, I guess. but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Older is older, but that's,
why don't we move the planning horizon up, though? I mean,
that's what I'd like to see.
I'd like to see that too, so that we don't have to be looking out 2 years. You can, we could, if we know we need something in a couple of years, we can plan for it now, get the money now, get it on order. If it's gonna take that long, get what you want, but I mean, just,
Yeah, the last
Let's move
car
it
I
up.
ordered, actually, I waited a year, and then Ford canceled the order.
Yeah, but
After
that,
a year
so-
wait,
but that hopefully was pretty specific.
Well,
There was a little bit of a disease going on at that time, as I remember, but that's, yeah.
But hybrid cars are going to get better, and they're maybe a
Yeah.
few more years out.
Sheila's
but what-
looking for one right now.
Yeah. Hybrids,
No, no.
hybrids have been around
I
a
have
long
my good
time.
old gas-powered
A few more
car.
years out and you're full
I've got
electric.
2
I
of
can
them, and
outrun any
they're
car you
great.
got with
I've
mine.
got 2
Yeah.
of them.
So, if you want a car, you're gonna chase people down, you want a full electric.
The hybrids are really worth the purchase price.
Yeah, I'm not dead
They-
set against them at all,
Yeah,
sir.
they really are. Yeah, they are.
But they have to be available.
You have to be available,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, also, the last point is what the chief brought up in terms of reliability.
Breakdowns.
And so I think that has to be, right now, what the chief is telling us is that the ones that are up for our purchase are not quite reliable. And that plays into it too.
Surprising news, I really hadn't heard that hybrids were having that much trouble, but I
Well,
guess that's
police
what's
cars are a
up.
different kind of vehicle,
Yeah,
too,
they-
sir.
the way
It's
they have
driven
to
a little
run 'em.
differently, too, so.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. All right, I'm good.
Okay,
Me
thank
too.
you.
So next we have Chris Simeone for Public Works.
This is where the big bucks come in.
You got an electric truck?
A big spender. So this is kind of a snapshot of the next 3 years, but this year what we're proposing is $868,000 in roads, $95,000 in sidewalks. We're proposing to replace our 2007 trackless at a cost of $220,000, and truck 8, which is 21 years old this year, at a cost of $90,000. And I'll get into that in the next couple of slides. The future years, other than next year, we're looking to replace our current lift at the highway garage. These 1-ton trucks, or 1.25 ton, 1.5 ton trucks, are bigger now, they're heavier now. Right now, our lift is maxed out for the smaller trucks that we have. The service truck, for example, that we have down at wastewater, we cannot even lift with the lift that we have. So that work's gonna be done on the floor. And then the future years from here on out, you know, we're looking at investment in the roads, the sidewalks, and replacement of vehicles. Next slide, please. Similar for FY '28, FY '29 in the future. Again, it's road, sidewalks, and vehicle replacements. We have made some adjustments in the plan based on issues that we may have been having with certain pieces of equipment or the age of equipment. One example is the loader. We'd push that out a couple more years. That's still in reasonably good shape with, you know, moderate hours on it. So this kind of remains somewhat fluid based on, you know, condition of the vehicles and the work that they need and the mechanics assessment of those vehicles. Yes, John?
On the FY '25, just going back there and in the '26, are you factoring in what might be required due to climate storms and extra mitigation as opposed, is this just repair? Would these numbers be the same, I wouldn't say 10 years ago, because obviously it'd be different values, but are there any factors there for things needing repair possibly more frequently? Or is this looking at business as usual space?
Some of this is business as usual. Some of it is a result of issues that we're seeing because of these newer, you know, heavier rain events that we're getting. We also have some proposed resiliency projects coming up as well that we'll get to in the coming slides.
So these numbers are factored into this?
So these would not be factored into the resiliency projects that we have planned. So for instance, Ocean Avenue, that we're currently doing the design on now, these numbers don't reflect that.
Not reflected.
Correct.
They're in special projects.
Oh, of course, that's right. Got it.
Next slide, please. So to focus on FY '25, if you folks, you probably have the PowerPoint in front of you on paper, but the table on the left is what we had proposed this year, which was Wiles District Road, to reclaim and base pave that road. Shim and overlay on West Oak and Lock Streets, overlay Firefighters Park. We put a number in there for drainage allocation. We typically have to buy, you know, structures and piping and stuff of that nature when we're, you know, reconstructing these roads. And then we also put an allocation in there for gravel, you know, for the shoulders of the road. And that also contains the excavator lease for the yearly lease amount. The table on the right is basically the same table. You will see 3 streets highlighted. So Summit Avenue, Central Avenue, and Edgewood Avenue. These are streets that came up in August that we've, you know, received some complaints about, you know, with drainage concerns. So Summit and Central Avenue, there's been an issue there from the understanding that I was given from the residents that over the last 20 years, the water that runs off of Summit Avenue kind of continues down the backsides of those properties towards Ocean Avenue. One of our residents down there has a gravel driveway that typically washes down into Ocean Avenue on these heavy rain events. So they're asking us to obviously take care of that issue. We did go down in August and September and did what drainage improvements that we could for the time being, obviously knowing that we can't reconstruct the road. I will say that has helped mitigate some of the issues that we've had down there. The last couple of heavy rain events that we've had has not washed out the driveway like it has in the past. So that has, helped curb the problem for now. But part of that problem is that we do need to shim and overlay those streets so that we can divert that water better to the drainage, because right now it kind of follows down the middle of the road.
You say shim, you're just tilting or just changing the
Yes,
slope
yep.
of the-
Yeah, the elevation of the road, one side or the other. Yep, so that we can direct that, that water to a drainage ditch or a catch basin. Edgewood Avenue, it's a similar problem, not so much an erosion issue like we have on Summit or Central Avenue. But we do have a puddle that seems to collect down there in the road. The issue that we've had is, like we see a lot now with development, people are starting to pick up their properties a little bit when they build. They'll add to their driveways, add to their lawns. So the issue that we have now is that water collects in the road, because now the road becomes, the low spot. So Eric and I did have a neighborhood meeting with those folks back this past summer. They're looking for a solution to that puddle down there. They have concerns, obviously, in the wintertime. If that puddle freezes before, we can get the water off the road, it becomes a hazard. So they're looking for a longer-term solution that would involve some type of closed drainage. That would have to be looked at, if we were to go to that extent with an engineering firm to see if that's possible. There's some challenges down there with that. One of the challenges is whether or not we have enough elevation to get that water to the marsh. Other challenges, maybe we would need easements from property owners down there to bring that drainage across their property. And then lastly, you folks saw it in this storm. The water in the marsh, certainly if we have an event like this, water on Edgewood is not going to drain. And conversely, that water that's in the marsh will make its way back up the drainage onto Edgewood Avenue. So it's not a simple solution. Certainly overlaying the road would keep the water off the road, but it will push that water back onto the properties, the neighboring properties down there.
Can we, so just maybe, I know in the past we've talked about this, and I know this is another not easy solution, maybe no solution, but the bridge going over towards Kings Highway, towards Little River.
Yes, yep.
So that has the water collection, very much like Edgewood during rain. It just doesn't move, and I know there's not an easy way to get it down, or we legally can't get it down into the marsh.
Yes.
But like a storm like we just had, the bridge gets covered completely, non-passable. Is that an issue with our pumping station or access to the pumping station? Or is there a way to, is that on your planning in the future to take a look at that area and see what we could do?
Yeah, I think this is probably the first time that the water has been over the bridge down there. I certainly in the, previous storms, we've seen it certainly to the, the bottom of the bridge, and we've seen some flooding, but we've still, if we had to get there, we could. So like anything else, I think these storms are becoming more frequent, so it is something that we're gonna have to look at. Certainly I think it was more passable than Dyke Road was, for instance, the other day. But all of these are something we're gonna have to look at.
Okay.
So you can see that we've highlighted those in yellow. That would add almost 70 grand to the capital budget this year if we were to include those. We certainly are getting more and more requests. Road costs are going up and up. As we'll discuss at the end of this session, the requests for the capital budget are twice what we've normally funded in the past. And so we've got to make some decisions, and we're looking for feedback on how much we're going to fund.
I would, from my perspective, we have to, like the slideshow that the chief showed, and Chris, we've had some serious rocks being moved around and sidewalks and edges. And if you said, okay, this is your money, this is your decision, I would put our money into shoring up our infrastructure to, and making trade-offs where some of the nicety things that we'd like to do for the town, that maybe have been presented previous to us, some of the nicety sides, the fun stuff that we just have to, push those out and get our, take care of some of this stuff. We're impacting homeowners, we're impacting access of people moving safely, through the town. And I think that's got to be our utmost responsibility.
And emergency access to it.
Chris, did we have any infrastructure damage during this, like sewer lines or water lines?
No, so, really on the sewer side of things, we were okay.
How about the hydraulic side this time?
No, we actually fared out pretty well in this storm. I don't have the numbers. Eric might have them off the top of his head, but, we took, how much did we take in the other day?
About 2 inches, about 2 million on our peak.
Wow.
So nobody can hear you over there.
Right. So if you took 2 million, you said, Eric, what above normal, a normal day? What was the above expected amount?
So the plant design is on average is 700,000 gallons.
700, so
Yeah,
it's
so
almost 3X.
hydraulically, we could probably do 1.6 to 1.8. We were able to manage 2.
Yeah.
With a few tricks of the trade, we opened up a tank, we did different things. We had a little bit of tankage on site.
Right.
So just to take the top of the curve off, just to kind of bring down that flow, the hydrograph a little bit, kind of reduce that hydrograph a little bit. So just a few tricks that we did, no issues, everything went through the plant, treated everything.
Yeah.
Just to follow up on that, because I just want to explain, there is a difference between this time of year and summer months. So when Eric said, we can open up a few tanks, during this time of year, we're operating on one aeration tank, so those are the large 3 aeration basins that you see at the plant. We're only operating on one of those. So we have that extra tankage, like Eric said, so that, we can, pull the slide gates on those and divert some of the flow to those tanks, so we kind of stave off that peak. But during the summer months, we wouldn't be able to do
So
that.
if this had happened in August, this would have been a much different story.
It would have been July 4th all over again.
Right.
It very well may have been, yeah. We would have had one tank that we would have been able to open, because we're typically on 2 during the summer months, to use our anoxic zones, but
But that ain't gonna hold an extra 1.3 million.
117,000 is what each of those tanks hold.
And the majority of that, we think, is coming from illegal sump pumps into sewers. That's an assumption that there's a lot of that occurring.
So I do know that there's some pumps tied in. I just found one again last week down on Spring Street that's going to get corrected. So certainly, I suspect that some pumps are an issue.
So people need to understand that, and it's a real effect on our ability to handle our wastewater.
Yes, it's just unnecessary water that we need to treat at the plant.
A heck of a lot when there's a heavy rain.
Yes. Yep.
So we had talked when you and I met and went through, Eric and Chris took John and I through a tour of the wastewater
It's
plant.
fun, isn't it?
It was.
It is, yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
It's fascinating.
It is.
And so, I won't repeat what you just said.
Well, go ahead.
He said it was good something,
Oh,
I'll let you
okay.
fill in the other part of it, because we're being on TV now. But I think part of it, we talked about the excess water coming through, and that maybe the first step would be education, because maybe a lot of residents don't understand that their sump shouldn't be tied in to the sewers, and,
Kind of my
maybe.
thought on bringing it up.
Yeah,
Yes,
maybe
yeah.
work with Hope and others for some communication out to the town and the residents, and make sure that they are informed.
It's a serious impact.
Yep.
So do you want to go to the next one?
Yep, and go to the next slide. This is kind of just a snapshot. Again, it's fluid, so this would be FY 26, 27, 28, and 29. This is kind of what we had forecasted for those 4 years. Again, conditions change, so some of this may change as well, but this is just a snapshot of those 4 years. Next slide, please. So this is the 2003 International that we're looking to replace this year on the left-hand side. And on the right, that's a picture of the 2007 trackless. And next slide, please. So the 2003 International, this truck was originally purchased to plow Goose Rocks Beach because it's a smaller truck. It's a little bit more nimble than the larger 5-ton dump trucks that we have. This truck has at some point in time had been kept as a spare truck, but it's starting to show its age. The picture in the top center is the bottom of the dump body. Below that is a picture of the leaf springs that are starting to separate. On the right-hand side, there's just more examples of corrosion. This truck, at this point, will not pass state inspection without a large amount of work. So we're looking to replace this. My proposal would be that we're going to replace this with something that is less expensive. So we're looking to go to like an F550 chassis, which is bigger than a 1-ton dump truck. It would be a gas engine. So it's a truck that's large enough that we can put an 11-foot plow on. So it would still be large enough to plow and be capable of taking care of Goose Rocks Beach. Or even any of the smaller side roads that we have downtown. We just feel it would be more utilitarian for us during the summer months, because we do get short on the smaller trucks in the summer months, with a part-time parks person, taking care of the open spaces in the cemeteries. So going to a slightly smaller but just as capable truck, it's going to be more utilitarian, and this would be a much less expensive option. We'd be looking at $90,000 for the F550 chassis with a plow, a dump body, as opposed to this truck, which is just over a couple $100,000. So, and we feel that it would suit our needs just fine. Next slide, please. So this is our 2007 trackless. We've had this machine for 17 years now. So this handles a bunch of different functions. Obviously, we clear sidewalks with it in the wintertime. We do our roadside mowing with it in the spring, summer, and fall months. We also have a brush, broom attachment for it, which you'll see down at the beach, I guess, next week. We'll be using it to clean up the streets down there. These machines see a lot of hard use. Everything we ask them to do is real work-related stuff. This machine had been kept as a spare. What I have seen over the last couple of years is more of a demand for the trackless type work. I routinely get calls about the roadside mowing during the summer months, and we've typically sent out both machines to try to catch up. Same with the sidewalks. I think in the past, it was less demand to have the sidewalks done, immediately following a storm. And then usually that was worked on in the following days. But now we're getting those requests to make sure the sidewalks are cleared, promptly after. So having two machines gives us the ability to send both of them out. The other issue that we do have is these machines are Canadian built. So whenever we have to order replacement parts, it's usually a couple weeks because those parts are coming from Canada. What we have found recently is that sometimes those parts get held up at customs, and so, for a repair that we need to make, we're not always able to make it promptly. So it's nice to have that backup piece of equipment that can still go out. So that's why we're looking to replace that machine. Next slide, please. So these are special projects. Again, we're currently, working on the preliminary design for Ocean Avenue, the area of the Wamby, which you saw, obviously, again, was affected in this last storm. We just got back preliminary.
Why don't we go to the next slide?
Okay.
It has that detail.
So here, the picture on the left is the project area from, roughly Sandy Cove Road to the other side of the Wamby Beach. Picture in the middle is during the storm. And on the right-hand side, this is the preliminary cost estimate that we got back from the engineers, Wood and Kern, on this project. So looking at just a little over $2.4 million for that.
And just what's happening, you're gonna lift and, is that
Yeah, so the road,
drainage?
yeah, so the road would be raised, and then we would do what appropriate drainage we need down there, as well as, bolstering the Wamby Beach area so that we don't have this problem again, with the parking area washing out.
How do you bolster? What do you?
So, I mean, there's a number of different ways to do it. One of it is, kind of what we're doing down on Pier Road, where we armor it, you know what I mean, to keep that wave movement out of there.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
So you're actually gonna build a structure?
Well, the final design hasn't been done yet, but, this is just a preliminary cost estimate, so. Yep. Next slide, please. Streetlights, so we currently own 105 of those. In this current fiscal year budget, we were appropriated money to purchase 20 of those fixtures. Those actually just showed up last week at the highway garage, so we'll start working on getting those installed. But for the coming fiscal year, we are looking to replace another 20 at a cost of $50,000. Next slide, please. So ahead of the harbor resiliency, again, we just saw in this storm that this is a real problem, and something that we need to start looking at addressing. So what we are proposing for FY26 is the design to take care of these issues that we're having down there, and then construction would follow in FY27 or a little bit later. And next slide.
So for items like this, are there, like we did on, or we're going to be doing on Pier Road, are there grants?
They do become available. I haven't seen anything come out recently yet for these projects. I would think this, round of storms again and probably a FEMA declaration is going to start prompting maybe some more of this. But certainly if there's, grant funding out there, we would certainly look to capture that, so.
But not any known yet.
Not yet.
There aren't any available at this moment. There might be some small funds for help in design. But there certainly is the federal funds we can apply for through our congressional delegation. Those are very, very competitive funds. So we're hoping that the state will continue, like they did with Pier Road, give opportunities for these kind of resiliency projects. I mean, we're not alone up and down the coast. People are facing these issues, and we're hoping the state will work with the federal delegation to find more funds.
And next slide, please. Nope.
Is that your weather vane, Mike?
That's my, yep.
This is a
My girly
video from our satellite location.
it's called my front living room.
And yet, another area that we need to start looking at, obviously, is Dock Square. As we saw, it was a problem again with this storm as well.
Did they get any water this past time on the flood downtown? Did the
Yes.
buildings get water?
Hurricane, or that building's?
Yes, they did, yep. So this is something that we need to start, looking at on the horizon. So, we have kind of put a placeholder in FY28 for that design.
What's the general idea for that area,
Which one?
Dock Square?
Dock Square?
I mean, right now, we do have a state grant that we're working on with the Climate Initiative on getting public input into the design of Lower Village, working with Kennebunk as well as Dock Square. And so the challenge is, you're not just dealing with public infrastructure, you're dealing with private property as well. And so how do you coordinate so many property owners as well as public infrastructure? And especially when the people who are being impacted are leasing, and they don't own the property, you know, who's going to be making that investment? And so it is probably the largest challenge. You're working with a state bridge that is connected to private property on both ends. And we haven't seen the water come over the new Lanigan Bridge, but it is flooding those businesses to the point. And when we did the Climate Action Plan Task Force met with businesses, we heard from a lot of businesses in Dock Square and Lower Village who are like, pretty soon we're gonna start moving, because, you know, how many times can my business be interrupted by flood? And then what does Dock Square look like when we start having vacant shops and buildings there? It certainly impacts the parking lot, you know, it comes and goes, but it's happening more frequently. And so, you know, options are basically, we could try to stop the water in the river, or we can increase the height, or we relocate.
And stop the water is like a
Tidal dike,
title, okay.
it's obviously a big,
That's a big project.
yeah.
When we had the UMaine engineering students last year, was it, or the year before? They came and they worked with Eric on, as part of their capstone senior projects on what to do down there. And they had some interesting ideas, but they did look at the tidal gates and came to the conclusion that they didn't think that was probably the move. But I think it's gonna be an all-encompassing engineering and design plan because it involves so many parties.
So this 300,000 is for this calendar year, or 25, or
28?
28? Okay. Yeah. Oh, and the head of the harbor is for 28 also. Oh, this is all 28, okay.
So any other questions?
Good.
Good.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of work.
So you wanna move to wastewater?
We can move to wastewater.
Sure.
You're gonna let Eric
We're gonna
talk, or-
Eric share some of the pain here, yeah.
You can let Eric talk.
Yeah, so we did change, made a few changes here. We had some issues with some of our pump stations, specifically Goose Rocks Beach, which is our main pump station right there near the Dike Road. So we proposed making some few changes for this coming year and try to make some investment there. So part of the issue was our automatic transfer switch failed, and our control panel went partially underwater, so on and so forth. We were just anticipating we had to replace one motor. We're just trying to be a little more proactive, get those control panels out from them down below and things like that, just try to, and we're also hoping in doing so, we're gonna be able to hopefully defer reconstruction of that pump station in the future, so hopefully get another 10 years or so out. So, because we also recognize that when you're reconstructing number 12, which is Goose Rocks Beach, it's, we're talking about very loose sands and marine clays, not the best excavation material you want to be in. Very expensive to do those excavations. So that'd be a good one to be able to, we feel the infrastructure that's there is probably, meaning the concrete's probably in pretty good shape. Maybe we can just make some upgrades right now and get ourselves put out a little bit further. That was in the out years, so the thoughts are that we'll probably push that out even further. We also had deferred last year, we deferred I spoke about the 4 PLCs that we have at the treatment plant. We deferred one of those last year to try to get our budget back into shape. And so we'd like to replace that 4th. So we're doing the 3 of them this year. We're also doing the SCADA, supervisor control data acquisition. So those PLCs are talking to a central location to our SCADA system that we can manipulate and control those PLCs. That's being done this year. That's in this fiscal year, and that's in the works right now. Grinder pumps. We have 88 small pump stations in the town. We really have to focus on replacing some of those. 4 of those, like, for example, on the Lansford Road, went underwater in this last storm. We recognize that those are gonna get damaged, and so anyways, we just need to program some dollars to put back into those. Those are the small replacements. You see 10 there that we're putting into the budget. That's what's coming up for this year.
So do you want to move on? Further out, we have a lot of pump stations to replace.
Yep, so part of doing this, we deferred, I think probably in last year, I think we had Ocean Turbines and South Main Street in design this year. We deferred those for 1 year in lieu of placing number 12. So that was kind of the offset that we did. So we decided it was better to just put real money into the pump stations now, focus on the designs later on. These are not troublesome pump stations for us right now. They are old, but not troublesome per se. So we're kind of starting to defer those into the outer years. This is construction. You see here, the design would have been done in FY20, but is proposed for FY26. Once again, as Lori mentioned, this is a work in progress. We're going to evaluate this every year based on what we're experiencing in the moment, and recognizing where our weaknesses are. From there, we have just basically a solid plan of replacing certain pumps and pump stations. There's a big push on the pump stations. We also recognize.
Do you want to go to the next slide?
Oh, yeah,
We
go
have
ahead.
all our pump stations.
Yeah, well, here you go. So we have 16 major pump stations as well as a treatment plant. So our treatment plant, we call it pump station number 1. So other than that, we have 16 more after that, and you see them in the different locations there. You can see number 12 at the top right-hand corner. That gathers basically those 3 pump stations in Goose Rocks Beach. And pump station number 12 pumps all the way back to Cape Porpoise. And then it's a daisy chain of pump stations. So we're replacing Cape Porpoise currently right now. It's under construction. Patty Creek is under construction, and so is Wells District.
What'd
Those
you
are
run
3.
into at,
Huh?
did you run into problems at Mills Road?
Mills Road, not so much. We did run in, Patty Creek is currently being bypass pumped right there, and that went out underwater. The location went underwater. So, yeah, we had to, our contractor had to scramble and make some adjustments. We all did, I think, because that affected our other pump stations, because they were getting a surge. So, yeah, so we're planning for that tomorrow. As a matter of fact, tomorrow we're gonna be placing Patty Creek online officially.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so,
Patty Creek's the one on Wells District, it's down by the cemetery?
Right.
yeah,
down the
right
bottom of
next to
the
the
hill.
cemetery,
That
yes.
went underwater there.
Yeah, well, the road did, yeah, and typically it does. I've not seen that since I've been here, but yes, it went underwater, and that's where the bypass is occurring. It was right
That's
there, that
little
manhole
inlet
right there.
Right there.
Yeah.
That's what it comes in.
So,
So 13 pumps to 12, and then 12 is the one that takes it all the way to the,
yeah, so, yes, so 13 and 14 both pumped at 12, and so does Prescott.
got it, and then 12 is the heavy lifter that takes it.
That's correct, yeah.
Interesting.
Nick,
Cape Porpoise one, did they run into granite or something?
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
thought they did, yeah.
So the challenge with Cape Porpoise is it's really high up on the hill, a little harder for us to clean because you're getting into, not to get into the physics of it, but if you're a scuba diver, one atmosphere is about 33 feet. Water separates if I try to vacuum more than 33 feet. It's that and friction. So when I get deep, when 25, 26, 27 feet, it's very difficult to clean down that deep with a Vactor truck. So we're lowering that pump station by a few feet by moving it to the side a little bit. So
But
that's a
you
quick.
had to move ledge in order to fit it over to the side.
Yes, yeah,
Like a lot of lead.
yeah,
Lot of lead.
yeah. Well, I mean, part of that is, one of the upsides to doing that is they don't have to bypass pump during that time. Patty Creek, we only had a very small footprint there, so they had to bypass pump literally in the manhole that's right there. So there's no capacity for increase and decrease. There's a very small structure. And they literally put the pump station exactly where the old one was existing. So a little more challenging, has its own challenges when we do that. So,
A lot of work.
yeah, so, yeah, we're gonna give a little bit of the park back when we put Cape Porpoise back, so, yeah.
Can you dig up the anchor and just lift it a little bit?
We can probably move it for you, sure. We're gonna get electricity to the tree as well.
The whole thing is just sinking in.
so pump station 12, as we said, we had a failure this year, so we're looking to upgrade that.
Yeah. Make
And
some-
then next slide,
So this is what we talked about, human-machine interface. That's the SCADA system that we were talking about. So what we have is the PLCs basically all send their information. We have 4 PLCs at the treatment plant that send all their information back to that SCADA system. We're able to see it graphically in that system, and we're able to also tell the PLCs what we want them to do at what time and how to cycle and so on and so forth and how to behave. So that's being done right now. As I mentioned, we had 1 more PLC and control panel that we wanted to replace, 1 out of the 4. So we'll replace that 4th, and we'll be in good shape at that point.
So we can go forward 2 slides.
There you go. Those are the PLCs. These are the pump stations that we're recommending for going into design next year. So the South Main, Turbot's Creek, as well as Ocean. So just 8 older pump stations.
So how do we look at the ones that are out in the future? Like, under your future bucket?
Yeah,
Are you feeling like secure that they're out that far, or is there a risk level?
yeah, I mean, so I worry first about the daisy chains. The smaller pump stations I can adapt to because they're not taking as much flow. So I'm really focused on the really heavy flowing pump stations, which are, we're going to be Goose Rocks, number 12. Then the daisy chain is Cape
Yep.
Porpoise, Patty Creek, Wilds, and those are the major ones. So that's why we've really gone after those larger ones first, because if they fail, then my risk of having a sanitary overflow are much greater, at least volume-wise, it's much greater.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So do we have any other questions for Eric and about wastewater?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we've tried to provide you some charts. So right now you're going to see a debt analysis chart as we talked about different funding sources for different projects. And so Nicole's going to discuss this bar chart.
So this slide shows the current upcoming fiscal year 25 through 29, so 5-year plan. With, if you look in blue, that's what we currently have for our bonds. These are bond payments. So for the current debt, we have the police building, we have a Parks and Rec building, the seawall, village parcel, radio tower, and 2 wastewater bonds. And then with our 5-year CIP plan, with the future debt, I did like bond payment schedules, and that you'll see in orange. And that would include, the 25, fiscal year 25 town hall, the village fire station, head of the harbor, and 2 wastewater bonds. And that kind of shows you how it would look with the new bonds that we're proposing in this plan. And it looks like, if you look at 27, fiscal year 27, it increases, and that would be the start of the proposed bonds for the town hall and the village fire station.
When you say a wastewater bond, what, is that, those 6 million, is that what they are, or what?
It's for it'll be for the pump stations.
That's 1.3. Oh, okay, the smaller, yeah, good.
I mean, you can do it in
Yeah, indeed, no, indeed, but the thought was, yeah,
And this is just for the general fund, so this includes 60% of the wastewater bonds, and then the other 40% would be in the enterprise fund.
So we're not proposing tonight that you authorize these bonds, but just to give you a flavor of what that potential payment schedule could look like. So the next chart shows you what we have put in for operational capital since fiscal year 20. So you'll see at the bottom of the page what went into operational capital. 1.3 down to FY '24 was 2.2. And then we've been using our fund balance, our capital reserve fund balance, to offset some of those costs. So you'll see what was programmed in each year for the capital use of fund balance, and then what that capital impact on budget was. So once you reduce it by the use of the fund balance, what that net impact is. So for FY '25, you can see this CIP plan is proposing $3.1 million. And I just plugged in 200,000 for the use of the fund balance. We had talked about on the town hall project at one time at 800,000. So I wasn't plugging in more. They're not sure what we'll do, but tried to come in at a conservative level for now, which would mean we'd be at 2.9. Even if you put in 600,000, I mean, this level of capital funding is much greater than what we have been doing over the past few years. We're just trying to show you that comparison. So we did talk about some of the impacts of capital planning this year and in future years. Those special projects are growing, those infrastructure resiliency projects, and right now we don't have grant funding available. We're looking for opportunities, but it's really about how important are these items to you and how quickly we resolve them, and whether we're going to be looking and waiting for opportunities to present themselves or whether we need to move forward. But that completes our presentation on the capital plan.
Any questions, anybody?
No, I just have the comment that I made before, which is, you know, when I go through the line items, you know, given the great presentation, you know, my eyes will go towards
Infrastructure.
safety, security, which includes infrastructure.
Yeah, same here. Let's see what else we got. Okay. Item number 8, we're going to authorize the sewer commitment for prorated properties. I guess that would be Chris again.
So these are 9 properties that have come online over the last year, and the prorated portions due to each property. Do you want me to list them off by address and amount, or just the total amount?
No, I don't think we need them individually, do we? No.
You would normally sign off on a sewer commitment in total, so.
Exactly. Good.
I read through it, I'm good.
So,
Do we need a motion on this?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, I probably should read what it should say, but I'll move that we
So you're
commit.
committing these, because this is a legal process, which
So-
allows us to go through a lien process if people don't pay.
So I would move that the town commit a sewer rate for a total of
2,000.
2,000.
That's a big number. That's a smaller number. That's not so.
I'll take the 2 million.
$2,182.61.
You're in the millions, dude.
Heck, yeah, I've been thinking millions all night.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. So done.
Thank you.
Okay, next we want to accept a $230 donation from the Church on the Cape towards emergency fuel fund.
So moved.
Gratefully seconded.
All those all those in favor? Aye. Accept a $3,346 donation from the Kennebunkport Village Fire Department towards the general needs account.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye, 5-0. Other business, Mary Beth?
Yeah. So, let's see, before we get into the budget discussions, before we get into the budget discussions for the year, last year in the budget board meetings with the select board, we talked about some revenue ideas, and I think the budget board brought through something about the, I might get the terminology wrong, but the vintner's license by seat.
Yeah, not the vintners, but
But
rather
the
the liquor license.
Liquor license to be, is that something that some of the board can look at offline and then come back? That was a revenue
Something
generating.
staff is looking at to come back to a proposal for
Good.
the board.
How about that?
Perfect. And then my last one, second and last one is just some observations down at the beach, you know, with the water flow, and then we're having another storm. You know, it's a great job of putting the boulders in front, but if there's a way, we have like 6 or 7 access points at the beach, especially when Chris was talking about Edgewood. You know, if there's a way, maybe we only need 1 or 2 access points at the beach, and then we can boulder up the rest, like boulder meaning thick boulder back. When we were down there watching, it wasn't waves crashing over, it was the water seepage through. So if we could stop that, it might help Chris and the guys when they have to clean up all the sand. We might try to keep some of that at bay.
Do you have any thoughts to share?
Yeah, so a lot of what we saw in this last storm down at the beach is water did migrate around the rocks that were there. Some of that sand did wash out in the Kings Highway. Certainly, we can add more there to see if that will help bolster that. Obviously, it isn't going to be a watertight plug, you know what I mean? So those fines are going to travel to some extent, but certainly we could add more rock down there.
Is there a temporary kind of barrier that you can use when you're anticipating a storm, rather than keep adding boulders?
Yeah, there may be something, we haven't explored that, but what we do know is that we need something with some mass to it, that the water's not gonna move. Fortunately, we've had some of that at our disposal, from the granite that was reclaimed from Dock Square when the bridge was done. That's gonna be committed to the Cape Porpoise Pier project, but, you know.
The one piece by the tides entrance actually did its job. So there's just a nice full ramp of sand that just goes up to it. Of course, then there was a cascade of water.
Oh, over the top.
Once you got over it.
Sure.
But the long-term, this needs to be really addressed in a long-term solution. The dunes, I think if those would go down and look at it, we'll see what this next storm does. But clearly, the storms are at a frequency and an intensity that's not allowing the dune to restore itself in the way that it has traditionally been able to do.
Sure.
And it's just a fact. So whether we come to replenishing the dune, to do flyovers to get over the sand instead of having these breaches that just make it impossible to maintain the dune, there's going to be a long-term plan. And I know that the advisory committee, a beach advisory committee, is looking at trying to create such.
Yeah.
This is a real problem. It's I think, an existential problem for Kings Highway at the east end, as well as for the homes on the other side. And it needs to be addressed in the long range.
Yes.
So there are things that we could probably do, but it needs, we're beyond Band-Aids. And we really need to get serious about it.
And crew did go back down today and, you know, did move some of these rocks back. Some of those rocks had been moved. You know, so we replaced those and, you know, there were a couple areas that we did add, just to hopefully prevent that, in the coming storm. But, you know, as John said, there'll have to be a long-term
Yep.
plan. for
Yeah,
that.
thanks for all the quick cleanup down there. It was really nice.
Yeah, it's not-
I'm done.
John?
Yeah, basically, that was going to be the
was
comment.
it?
I flew the beach again today with the drone to create a 3D map so we can see how much we've lost with this storm. But this was the worst. This was worse than Riley. And Riley, you remember, it was 18, I think. Riley was nasty. That was the big nor'easter we had in March. And but this, we have lost dune that I believe goes back beyond 47. There's actually a carbon line you can see at the bottom of one of the scarps that I feel very probably was the forest fire of 47. So we've got nearly 80 years of dune sliced away. So this is a real issue. It's facing us today.
I'm all set.
You all set?
I'm good.
You set? I'm good. Just a couple things I'd like to say. I really appreciate the Highway Department folks, what they did. And, you know, it's unusual to see the day before we had, at our house, we had about 14 inches of snow. And then the day before. And then we got 2 or 3 inches of rain, it all went. And so they went from plowing snow to plowing seaweed. And so it was massive amounts of, I've never seen so much seaweed in the road. It's incredible. But the other point I want to make is we talk about the resilience. We're working on a lot of climate stuff now, John and I and others. and we're looking at the resilience. And one of the things, I've been there 23 years, I've never seen it, the Pier Road, not just in front of my house, but up around the corner, both ways. It was flooded everywhere. It was the whole thing. And we got a project now to replace to raise the causeway. And that's going to be underway pretty soon. And I got to think that if we're going to do the causeway, we won't be able to get to it unless we do something about that water that goes all the way up Fisher Lane and everywhere else. So I think they're all, as John said, we've got to do something about that, and we got to do something about the dunes. And it's money and time, and I don't know how we're going to do it all. But I really wanted to commend the Highway Department. They did a great job yesterday.
Thank
Great
you.
job.
Yeah, they were out for almost 18 hours,
Yeah, they did a
or
great
18
job.
hours on Sunday. I did have to bring them back in early Monday morning at 3 a.m., so they just got a small respite and had to clean the roads up before, school traffic on Monday. And then I had to bring them back in Monday night to clean up down in Dock Square. Because had we not done that, we would have had even more severe issues down there. So they are tired this week. They've worked a lot of hours.
We
so-
appreciate everything they did.
Yeah, we do.
Thank you.
Thank you, really true.
Yes.
So certainly, I want to thank police, fire, and Public Works for all their efforts. Unfortunately, these storms are coming more frequently, and they're becoming part of the work plan, being able to respond. And all the departments had all people available, and they were out dealing with a variety of issues. People are dealing with flooded basements, we're dealing with road hazards, we're dealing with high wind and people out of power. And the team really works to cover all those bases. And we're a small community with a small staff, and we luckily have a fire force that comes in to help. And I'm glad we're able to, but I worry about it with every storm about our ability to reach all those in need. I also wanted to just ask Chris, we didn't cover it in Craig's update, but Colony Beach. So as you remember, last year, we had a lot of storm damage there. The board had agreed to use contingency funds to replenish the gravel, build that back up. We had blocked off half the beach. For the summer, we were working to get Army Corps approval and DEP approval, and that is a slow process. And so in the meantime, we've had more damage there, and I just wanted you to update the board on that.
Yes, if you'll recall, we did go down, we placed a series of granite blocks to block off part of the beach that had sustained the most damage, and kind of left the parking area that was still reasonable there, that gave, vehicles the opportunity to park and be able to back up and turn around and leave without causing a traffic issue. That section that had been remaining this past summer is now gone. That has been scoured out and is currently sitting on the backside of the wall in the river as well. So at this time, it's a little deceiving if you go down there. You will see there is not enough room to park and turn a vehicle. But there is a lot of cobble. That stone stays live all the time, so when you try to drive on that with a vehicle, the vehicle just sinks because it's live underneath all the time. So we have left the beach, locked for now, just to prevent vehicles from going down and getting stuck trying to turn around, so.
So we have reached out to Woodard and Kerr, and we met them out there last year to talk about, the likelihood of doing something. I mean, you're talking either about another large resiliency project that's not on our CIP. Remember that that's federally owned and some privately owned. I would have, last year, we stood before you and said, we think it makes sense to invest this money. We haven't seen this level of destruction. Less than a year later, we've already seen it again, and we're about to face another storm. I don't think Chris and I feel that it makes financial sense to put money into that, but that means that next summer, Colony Beach is closed. I mean, people can go out there and walk, but there would be no parking out there. That is a very public access beach. So we're either looking for a long-term solution unless you want to continue to invest
I don't think
50 to 100 grand a year in that.
I don't think we can.
So we'll meet Barry and Megan out there, talk about it again, but I don't anticipate their answers are gonna be much different than they were last year.
Last year, yeah.
That's a shame.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Anything else?
So my one other item is, in 2021, the town took on 2 leases for electric vehicles through Hyundai.
Oh, right.
They were free, no payment. And one was used for codes and planning, one was used for public health. Those 3-year leases are coming due in March of 2024. Right now, we could purchase the vehicles, and the price is a little over $22,000 for each vehicle. I don't have funds. I don't have $22,000 to purchase those vehicles. I think that we did see some challenges with maintenance with them. I'm not sure. I would suggest we invest in those particular vehicles if you wanted to move forward. I did ask Hyundai whether or not there was another lease available. There's certainly not a free release, free lease. They did give me a quote that I received today for a Hyundai Ioniq for a 3-year lease under 10,000 miles a year at about $5,500 a year. So right now with the codes and planning, we already have the Subaru. It was nice to have the second car. But with public health, we had no vehicle, and we probably would spend about that amount of money in mileage reimbursements if we went back to the old way. So, it's something that Nicole and I are looking at as part of the next year budget, but also come March, we won't have that vehicle for public health anymore, and I'm just getting a sense from you guys if you have any thoughts on it or any desires for us to continue to examine.
I would think that,
Can do it.
yeah, I think it was a help for the town nurse.
I
And,
agree.
and an electric vehicle would be fine with me, John.
I'm agreeable with Sheila, I think that's correct. I think
You won one.
Yeah,
How can I have anything but approval on that?
I'd do it, yeah. Do it.
All right, well, we would come back and
Don't buy
we'll
the
have to
old
find some money, so
Don't buy the old ones.
don't buy the old ones.
Yeah,
That's all I have.
your electric car until
Not
we
yet,
get the money.
that's right.
Approve the treasurer's warrant.
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye.
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Me.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
Great job.
move to sign the papers. Second.